With Social Security racing toward insolvency within the next few years, Congress is running out of time to develop a viable plan. The former Social Security Commissioner under the Biden administration is pushing one specific solution, while the Trump administration claims we can fix the program by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. But there's another idea that nearly passed just over 20 years ago that could potentially increase benefits for future retirees by $2,000 per month or even more. Today, we're going to cover everything you need to know about these competing proposals and what they could mean for your future benefits. Before we dive in, I want to mention that Capital One is currently running a promotion for their 360 checking account. If you sign up using the link in the pinned comment and description box, then make 2 separate deposits of at least $500 within the first 75 days of opening your account, you'll receive a $300 bonus. These deposits can be your Social Security check, pension, direct paycheck, or any similar deposit. I may also receive a commission if you use my link, which helps support this channel. As always, terms and conditions apply. Now, let's talk about the urgency of this situation. Social Security is currently on track to reach insolvency by 2031 or 2032. I discuss this constantly on the channel because it's absolutely critical. These dates will be here before we know it, and without congressional action, automatic benefit cuts will affect everyone receiving Social Security. It doesn't matter whether you receive retirement benefits, survivor benefits, SSI, or SSDI. Everyone faces a 25% benefit cut. For the average retiree currently receiving around $2,000 per month, that check would drop to $1,500. Considering that millions of Americans are either completely or almost completely reliant on Social Security as their main source of retirement income, and many are already living on extremely tight budgets, cutting benefits by $500 per month would be devastating. Several different proposals are currently on the table. The former Social Security Commissioner under the Biden administration is advocating for one particular approach. According to Newsweek, with the system at risk of going broke, this former commissioner has backed a proposal he believes could save the nation's largest federal program. Last week, the Social Security and Medicare trustees released their annual reports, underscoring the scale of the long-running cash shortfalls that could threaten their ability to pay benefits within the next decade. The OASI Trust Fund, which serves as the primary source of funding for Social Security retirement and survivor benefits, is now projected to run dry by 2032, 1 year earlier than previously forecast. So what solutions have been proposed? The Trump administration has made Social Security a priority and believes many of the current difficulties can be remedied by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent stated last week that combined with the administration's efforts to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse across federal agencies and ensure responsible stewardship of taxpayer dollars, they're working to preserve Social Security and Medicare programs while recognizing that more work remains to secure benefits for future beneficiaries. Does waste, fraud, and abuse exist within Social Security? Perhaps, but we're likely talking about a small percentage of benefits going out, maybe 1% or less. Even if they eliminated all the supposed waste, fraud, and abuse within Social Security and Medicare, there would still be a significant shortfall. The main reason for this shortfall is that the birth rate has been declining over the past few decades, and Social Security has always been a program relying on a higher birth rate. The system needs more workers paying taxes into it than there are people collecting benefits. We used to have 5 or 6 workers paying taxes into the system for every one person collecting benefits. That ratio has now dropped to just 2 workers for every one beneficiary. A system designed to rely on more workers and a higher birth rate will inevitably face problems when those demographics shift. Congress now has to come up with a solution to fix this problem, or else the automatic fix will be a 25% across-the-board benefit cut for everyone receiving Social Security. O'Malley, who was nominated by former President Joe Biden to lead the SSA, has voiced support for a different approach. In comments to MarketWatch last week, O'Malley called the looming budget issues an entirely solvable problem, one that could be fixed if lawmakers scrap the cap. Former Labor Secretary Robert Reich likewise called the solution obvious, saying that eliminating the cap on income subject to Social Security taxes was the only way to reverse the program's fiscal trajectory. Some lawmakers have already backed this approach. The Social Security Expansion Act, introduced by independent Senator Bernie Sanders, seeks to restore the program's solvency by raising the taxable earnings cap to up to $250,000 while requiring wealthier households to pay taxes on a portion of their investment income. Currently, in 2026, you only pay Social Security payroll taxes on the first $184,500 you earn. Take a professional athlete like LeBron James or Patrick Mahomes, for instance. They're making $30 million, $50 million, or even more dollars every single year, but they're only paying Social Security payroll taxes on the first $184,500. That means millions of dollars of their earnings go untaxed by Social Security. If you lifted the cap, LeBron James would pay taxes on his entire income, whether that's $50 million plus from his basketball contract and all his endorsements, instead of just on the first $184,500. A lot of money could certainly be brought into the trust fund this way, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with that proposal. There's another proposal that deserves attention, one that was actually pushed more than 20 years ago under the George W. Bush administration. This proposal would privatize Social Security. It would need to be implemented primarily for younger workers, people currently in their 20s, 30s, and maybe even 40s. Instead of having the 6.2 to 12.4% they're taxed go into the Social Security Trust Fund, perhaps a portion of that could go into their individual retirement accounts. At the same time, we would need to ensure that people currently collecting Social Security benefits and those receiving benefits in the near future would still receive 100% of what they're supposed to. We wouldn't want to completely cut off funding for those currently receiving Social Security, and there are other important considerations like disability and survivor benefits that need to be protected. According to the Sentinel, what cruel irony that we learned last week that Social Security is going broke even sooner than we thought. The Social Security Trust Fund will be exhausted in 2032, according to the latest trustees report. How odd that it's even referred to as a trust fund, because there is no trust and there is no fund. Because of the Ponzi scheme structure of Social Security that only works if you have more young people paying in than old people collecting checks, the system is crashing. Right now, roughly 11,000 Americans are retiring every day, and only about 8,000 Americans are entering the workforce thanks to the declining birth rate. That's the real problem if we're being honest. Social Security has always relied on a higher birth rate, more people working and paying taxes into the trust fund than there are people collecting benefits. We knew this problem would eventually arise. You can only raise taxes so much if your birth rate isn't steady. With a declining birth rate, it's obvious you're going to run into this issue unless you increase immigration from other countries to expand the workforce. If your own country's citizens aren't maintaining the birth rate, you need to bring in more immigration. Interestingly, even though there's been a lot of talk about immigration levels, if you look at the actual statistics, immigration has been declining in this country. This financial train wreck should have been solved decades ago. It could have been if Congress had allowed young people to take the 12% taken from every paycheck and instead invest it in the stock and bond market over 40 years. If this had happened, people like me who are nearing retirement would have about $1.5 million each in their accounts and could collect a monthly benefit 3 times higher than what Social Security promises to pay. That would have made future generations better off because all future liabilities of the system would be eliminated, since all future benefits would come from personal accounts. There would be no need for benefit cuts or tax increases to keep the system solvent. The presidential candidate who first put this reform on the table was Steve Forbes in 1996, 30 years ago. Then former President George W. Bush picked up the idea and tried to implement it in 2005. The problem back then was that we only had 55 Republicans in the Senate, and for any bill to pass, you need at least 60 votes. At the time, no Democrats were on board with privatizing Social Security because the idea is considered risky. Stocks can always go down, even though over the past 100 years they've consistently gone up by around 10% annually. Here's what I have to say about that. Keeping Social Security the way it is under the current system is also a big risk. We're looking at a 25% across-the-board benefit cut in the next 5 years. If you're saying that Social Security right now is completely safe the way it is, and privatizing it is this huge risk, I have to disagree. Right now, that 25% benefit cut is a huge risk and a very big deal. The current system obviously isn't working. Privatizing Social Security may not be the perfect solution, but they have to change it in some way that benefits the future of the program. Let me walk you through a hypothetical scenario. Let's say someone has been working for the last 35 years at minimum wage, and we'll compare them to another worker who made the average wage over the last 35 years. Both are now ready to collect benefits at age 67. In one scenario, they're collecting Social Security as it currently exists. In the other scenario, we're taking 12.4% of each person's paycheck and investing it into the S&P 500, which has earned around 10% on average over the last 35 years. First, the minimum wage worker. If they had invested over the last 35 years, they would have $550,000 in their account. Using the 4% withdrawal rule, they'd receive around $1,830 per month. With traditional Social Security, they would only receive $1,250 per month. By investing the money themselves, they would receive an additional almost $600 per month compared to just receiving Social Security. Now for the average wage worker. Their total portfolio after 35 years would have grown to $1.5 million. Using the 4% rule, they could withdraw $5,000 per month. With traditional Social Security, they're only receiving $2,600 per month. If they were able to invest the money in a private Social Security account, they'd receive an additional $2,400 per month compared to the $2,600 they'd get from traditional Social Security. Of course, that amount would be even lower after a 25% benefit cut. Look at the annual differences. The minimum wage worker would receive $15,000 per year from Social Security versus $22,000 if they invested in their private account. The average wage worker would receive $60,000 from their privatized Social Security account versus just $31,000 under the current system. That's almost double for the average wage worker and still substantially more for the minimum wage worker. Now, there are other important factors to consider. Disability Social Security is extremely important. Someone could be working and get injured in their 30s and never be able to work again. It's vital to have Disability Social Security in place. Survivor Social Security is also crucial. We definitely need to keep something in place for those situations. But when you look at these scenarios and see how much better everyone would do over the last 35 years with privatized Social Security, it's compelling. Not just for the wealthy, not just for average workers, but also for those earning minimum wage. Everyone would receive more. It seems like a solution they should seriously consider, even if it's just partial privatization. Maybe not the entire 12.4%, but perhaps half of that, maybe 6.2%. At least younger workers would be better set up for the future. Social Security as it currently exists is certainly not completely safe if we're talking about a 25% across-the-board benefit cut coming in the next 5 years. I want to hear from you. Would you be open to the idea of privatizing Social Security if it meant that what you're receiving now wouldn't be decreased? If what you're currently receiving would be completely safe, would you be okay with privatizing Social Security for younger workers? Leave your thoughts and comments below. That's all we have for today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.